And we're back. Quick as lightning, we found Surrender, and we're ready to head into our first game of the match, which, as we were just talking about, is going to be Druid up against the Warrior. Warrior for TIZS, and Surrender, obviously without a Warrior of his own, is going to be playing the Druid. I think it's going to be a very close one, but also a very impactful one to decide the course of this series, because as we talk about with Last Hero Standing, if Warrior can take a win right out of the gate, you believe in particular that's a very strong sweep deck, I believe.
Yes, I would have to agree. That's assuming that other decks in the lineup are not very heavily teched for weapon removal, and even just with the ooze in there for TIZ's Demon Hunter, for example, if he were facing Warrior on the other end, hypothetically, I still don't feel like the Warrior is that sad about it because they have the second weapon, and that second weapon can eat up all of the charges of the upgrades, etc. In case though that TIZ is the one who doesn't have to face Warrior, and so I feel like he has a very, very good shot of sweeping with it.
Well, we'll have to see. Of course, Surrender can just put an end to that right out of the gate with his survival of the fittest druid here. And I'd have to imagine if he doesn't get the win, he's going to be transitioning over to Priest, because Mage doesn't feel like the best matchup against the Warrior. I'd be interested to see how losing the Pirate package affects that matchup in particular. But now, finally, ready to jump into the game. TIZS throwing away all these cards because none of these are weapons or weapon buffs.
Nor weapon draw. He was definitely looking for number one Corsair cash to get started. By cutting the Pirate package, it also kind of means that you don't have a turn one play that you would settle for in the form of the Sky Raider. But the other upside, I suppose, is that Corsair cash is now guaranteed to get Wrench Caliber if you're not running Ankar.
That's true, and also the slight weirdness that you can get into lists like Tom's one that's running Ankar, double Wrench Caliber, and double Horde Pillager is you always have a chance, unless you're just not playing it for the whole game, of resurrecting the Ankar as well, which can get a little bit funky.
Surrender's hand, devoid of ramp, but he does have a minion curve. The Ghidra can come down here, and you probably don't expect it to live, but if it does, you can buff it with the Bog Beam. Alternatively, just Bog Beam in Twilight Runner seems decent as well.
I'm on board with that. It's kind of tough because with these situations where you have like early Bog Beam and no ramp, I kind of want to try and save the coin to set up for Coin Ghidra Bog Beam, which actually just puts a lot of pressure on the board and can be quite difficult for the Warrior to clear off.
And there's also Coin Guardian. I would ideally want to get down as soon as possible, but just with the way Surrender's hand is shaped, I can most realistically imagine a coin into 5-drop play turn 4, 5-drop turn 5, Ghidra Bog Beam turn 6, if nothing better, and then Guardian Animals. It's very slow and it seems extremely honest for Druid, but that just seems to be the way it turns out.
Although I think it is worth bringing up now with the kind of the one card that we're not talking about in hand being Broomstick, how worth it is saving Twilight Runner to go with Broomstick. Like, does he have to guarantee the attack and thus the card draw? Because if he just plays out Twilight Runner, he is walking pretty hard into a Blade Storm.
That is true. Because I discussed that the hand has curves up till the 7-mana turn naturally, the card draw is 100% crucial, especially since the Guardian Animals could pull out the second Twilight Runner. The alternative to not playing this out, though, is just giving TIZS all the time in the world to potentially equip his own Wrench Caliber. So I like that Surrender went for it despite it walking into Bladestorm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing that's worth talking about at this point, is we've seen, at this point, we've been talking a lot about Surrender's hand. TIZS clearly doesn't have the Wrench Caliber. Whether or not you can see his hand, he does not have the ability to start swinging with that and upgrading it. So Surrender doesn't have to play super aggressive. You know, he does not have to go Lightning Bloom Guardian Animals on this turn in order to go as quick as possible, although it is still Lightning Bloom Guardian Animals, and it's very much worth considering.
Yeah, it's just getting the pressure online as soon as possible after he's seen a Bladestorm, which would potentially be the best answer to this type of board. TIZ's hand, I'm glad you pointed out that we didn't talk about it at all, because it's been so awful. It's everything that benefits from Wrench Caliber, but not Wrench Caliber. And to the point that we see him play the cutting class as an Arcane Intellect. big yikes. He's just considering whether this shield slam is worth using on the 4-5. I was actually about to advocate for it because the armor might be shaved off soon, but the Doom is low-key pretty insane for TIZS.
Yeah, I think that TIZS has, with the shield block in hand, a reasonable expectation that shield block will be able to get, shield slam will be able to get some kind of value when comboed with it.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
I wonder.
Surrender has second GA in hand, but of course he's overloaded. I would imagine that the turn still starts with drawing with the Twilight Runner by trading it into Doomsayer.
Yep, I agree. I mean, I don't think there's anything especially to be upset about at all with this Doomsayer, to be honest. It's annoying, of course, that you have to sink damage into a minion instead of to the face. But it's no damage on your minions, you know. You're still rocking a very healthy board.
Yeah, it's kind of like an ice barrier getting played for TIZS. And the draw of Overgrowth is absolutely huge here for Surrender. Smooths out the rest of his mana, and he has a lot more to work with because Kael'thas has now entered the hand.
Yeah, he was otherwise pretty much straight up just looking at Ghidra, I think, or Pass, very possibly as well, if he wanted to save that. But now, ramping up. Kael'thas, double spell plus 1 mana Guardian Animals, if he wants to go for the most explosive turn possible, which maybe is a little bit overcommittal. The point being here, he's got powerful plays for days.
And Surrender just generates the best 3-drop beast, King Mukla.
Of course he does.
That's pretty insane.
Whoa. Best beast, best draw, best player?
Could possibly be the case.
That's gotta be tempting.
There's an argument to be had for the second GA coming down. Because of the chance of drawing the last couple beasts, and also it's more immediate pressure on the board. But because of the way Ysera interacts with the Twilight Runner... Oh, sorry, both runners have been played by this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point you bring up about drawing the beast, because there's only 2 left in the deck, I believe, with 1 Thrasher, 1 Teacher's Pet. But it's Ysera in play right now. You just want to get it down and get that constant drip, that life support of dragons coming down 1 or 2 at a time over the course of the game.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Gosh, the draws for TIZS have just been so bad. No Wrench Caliber to unlock anything. The Brawl is not something he wants to play on just 2 minions. And Surrender just... That's gotta be the play.
It's really tempting, isn't it?
It's just a question of whether he wants to commit Kael'thas with it. I think that if TIZS did not have an answer for a 5/5/4/12, and you've seen a Bladestorm played, I'd like to just see Survival come down and smash a bunch of damage to the face.
Yeah, again, the only thing for me is that Survival doesn't buff dragons that are in portals in your deck. It buffs dragons that are on board. So there is some reason to hold on to them. But I think last time we had this discussion, you know, you pretty much persuaded me with, if there's a bunch of dragons on the board, you're probably winning the game anyway. It doesn't matter if they're buffed or not.
It's just a question of how much Surrender feels he needs to commit, that TIZS does not feel comfortable spending 5 mana just to draw a couple cards. This, I feel, absolutely merits a response from TIZS. And if the response is there, Surrender has Guardian Animals to follow up, if not dragons coming off the deck.
Cash. Cash money. Let's go.
I mean, I want to say better late than never, but it could be too late.
Equally terrible as never.
And the fact that this Bladestorm coming down, while it does get rid of the Mukla, it's TIZS's activator for the Barov also. In the end, he does not want to tank the 9 damage. That's completely understandable. We could just see potentially Brawl or Deathwing clear up the next board. But the Barov will have to wait for a Shield Slam to activate it. Or...
Ooh, I believe that was an overflow off the top for Surrender. Again, needs to be very careful about overcommitting onto the board here, because Brawl is the constant concern. And at 13 attack on the board already, this is a threatening enough board. He doesn't have to commit anything extra here.
He doesn't have to, and it's also worth noting that despite those 2 minions having 7 health, he's seen double Blade Storm. It gets to the point where the coerces become potentially scary, so in the end I like that he goes for specifically Guardian Animals here and not Overflow, because as you said, Overflow can overextend with dragons, and it also has the possibility of drawing the beasts, and then the GA becomes useless. So I like that Surrender prioritizes this. And with near the outcome, Surrender's pretty happy here, because he also has the Death Rattle behind this Teacher's Pet.
True, yeah.
Most likely 2 minions ending up on board.
Yeah, the concern for me was whether you go Barov rule there. I know it's a huge use of resources, but it potentially keeps you alive for that extra turn when he's very, very much precariously balanced on the edge of death.
Yeah, it's to the point where second survival is very close to lethal. Survival Ironbark is actually lethal here.
Yeah.
TIZS willing to take that risk, and I think that's very reasonable, just to keep the Barov in hand, because it's his last AoE if he gets a Sword and Board or Shield Slam to pair with it.
Yeah, I agree.
Only a semi-AoE after Survival's been played, you'd have to assume.
So it's unfortunate again that there's no instant Kael'thas activated, because trying to go for a lethal hit with drawing and playing the Survival of the Fittest I think would be a big draw, a very tempting play from Surrender. But I really don't hate the idea of just like playing Overgrowth in order to get the 0 mana spell, and then playing either, Ghidra or Lake Thresher on this turn. Wow. In the end, though, he's going Overflow as well instead of the Overgrowth, and he is going to be massively filling up this board.
Surrender smells blood.
Looks like I'm here just in time.
It's weird because to get the maximum value on the Ghidra, you do have to commit the draw. But we could have seen Ghidra Overgrowth there instead.
Yeah.
Granted, he brawl, so Surrender is betting it all on this board. And not necessarily even everything, just the one Lake Thrasher and Kael'thas Survival are threatening as follow-up.
There's the clear, though. Coerce off the top is what he needed to clear off Lord Bruv and clear the board once again. Surrender now is getting to that point I was talking about, where he's still got threats. You know, he's still winning the game, likely to win. But with a couple of very perfect draws here from TIZS, I think there's the potential to outlast almost all of the threats from Surrender.
Is there, though? The hand is dry of Rook. Deathwing is there, but if Surrender goes for second survival, Deathwing is 1-for-1 trades.
Yeah, I guess there's still a couple of dragons in the deck. Okay, so is it just aggro? Is that the game plan? Hope that he gets the perfect series of bombs?
It could be. And it's not like Surrender can just stay at 10 and hope to overdraw the bombs, because Dr. Boom is always a threat.
And I guess this is the thing that I always underestimate with the deck, is even though he's starting to run out of threats, you know, there's only a couple dragons left in the deck, Kael'thas, all the beasts have been used up apart from the Thresher. Just these brooms on their own are going to be 9/9 minions on the following turn. They're real threats in their own right.
Dark. How about Runic Carvings, Survival of the Fittest?
Oh, yes, please. I'll have one of those.
Does it fit? I don't think it the mana anymore because of the Kael'thas nerf.
1 mana off, right? Yeah.
Time waits for no one.
But still, the 2/2s are perfectly threatening themselves if there's no brawl in hand.
Excess mana costing 1 there instead of 0, kind of unfortunate.
Well, this Deathwing could get quite a lot of work done.
Yikes.
Okay, that's the worst outcome for TIZS. Couldn't tell you if it was likely or not, but these two tutus are threatening survival buffs.
Yeah,
You
so
could see the wrench caliber sink into one of them.
11 health here, 13 health if you press the hero power. Survival of the fittest would be one-off lethal because he can't fit in the hero power as well.
Is that worth? Have we seen both of the iron barks?
I think just one actually.
So that is what he's playing around, I suppose. Immediate
Mm.
time being, at least. Is it dumb that I still want to play survival here? Okay, taking the draw first, of course, to summon dragons before you buff the board.
I think you have to have something else on the board. If you draw dragons from the deck, then yes, I think you can get away with playing survival. But otherwise...
And also he's overloaded, might be bad.
Right. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, here are the dragons. This is the threat. You've seen Barov, you've seen Brawl, you've seen Blade Storms. This is getting very, very scary. But what else is getting scary is that Surrender is at 12 health.
Yeah, with very, very few cards in the deck, so the bombs are even more likely, if they're shuffled, to get drawn immediately.
He gets Bite, but he doesn't play it on this turn.
I can only assume that means there's just one bomb left in the deck for Surrender.
I mean, even then, Wrench Caliber swing face, right? And that's where things get scary.
Yeah, because it can come down one after the other if there is just one bomb. We need to get deck tracker soon, Dark.
Yeah.
Treasure? Loot?
Well,
In any
swing in
case,
face. That's the
TIZS
best he's
without
got.
any board clears has only one option. And he's alive.
Very, very close there for Surrender. Oh, excellently done there with the Druid, lining up first and taking down the Warrior. As we were saying at the start, you know, Warrior has a real shot at swinging things around and going for a full sweep, but Surrender taking it out of the way with his Druid. I think he, of all players, has perfectly highlighted the sweep potential that Druid has in its own right, with his first series of the weekend being played yesterday. A very, very clean sweep with the Druid. He's in a good spot, I think, to just potentially go all the way with this list.
Yeah, it's could be a repeat of what we saw on day one. And despite me saying that Warrior seemed like the deck to take a lot of sweeps, it has been going the other way every so often. It has to be noted, though, that TIZS' draw was really slow, probably the worst one I've ever seen from a war. To be fair, Surrender has not gotten the ramp in the beginning of that game and still managed to get there.
Yep, I think nicely played there by Surrender. It was a good doling out of all the threats over the course of the game, not going too far in. The one turn I have a small question about is the Gidra overflow turn. But even then, he'd just seen a Brawl, he'd seen the Blade Storms. It wasn't ridiculous to assume that the board clear wouldn't be there. And he knew, even with all of that, he should be able to get over the finish line. So very nicely done by Surrender, representing South Korea, going up 1-0, trying to get his spot in the finals up against Tom as our next and final game of the day for APAC. We're going to find out if he can complete the full 3-0 sweep against TIZS, or if TIZS can start to put his name on the board with a win. Right after this, we'll be right back.
제가 그러지 못하기도 하고, 그래서 이제 그런 재밌는 사람이 되기를 원하고.
둘 중에 하나 선택해야 된다면 제일 똑똑한 사람이
되고 싶어요.
I would rather be the funny man than intelligent man. But in fact, I think I am the intelligent man, not funny man. Yeah.
我会选择做一个最快乐的人吧，就是最快，因为我觉得，在一个很多人的地方的话，很多人的地方很需要有一个就是很懂得搞气氛的人，不然会很无聊。
I feel like being the funniest person in a room requires a lot of energy. It's very exhausting, I feel like. And I'm just more chill, laid back. I'd rather be the most intelligent person.
比较搞笑，比较开心啊，会让很多人开心啊。
Do you think you are the most intelligent person in this room?
Do you think I am the most intelligent person in this room? No, I think Sato is the most intelligent person in this room.
Correct answer.
This is Hearthstone Grandmasters. You're watching APAC, and it's the second semi-final match of the day. It's also day 3, of course, which means that we are crowning our champion for week 2 to dethrone Bank Yugi after his very strong performance last week, coming in strong as a newcomer to Grandmasters, but still able to get a very well-deserved win, in our opinion. And I think you and I can agree, Gia, that whether it's one of the old guard, be it Tom waiting in the finals, Surrender, or TIZS, as definitely the newest and least well-known of these players, all would be very well-deserving champions based on their play thus far.
Absolutely. For Tom in particular, though, it'd be cool to draw a parallel between him and Bank Yugi, because Bank Yugi, hands down, had the weirdest lineup last week, at least in the top 8, whereas Tom is also bringing the most off-the-wall one, but he's also had the most dominant performance thus far. And if Tom's previous results against anyone else in the semifinals have something to say, it does look likely that he could take the victory, because he has faced Surrender, Tyler, and TIZS last week and beat all of them.
Well, kicking things off now with TIZS fighting back on the Demon Hunter. As I was saying just before we had to go to a break a little while ago, Demon Hunter is the worst performing class for APAC this week before the start of the day, taking a big dip since the Swiss portion, which is a little bit disappointing for me, I think it's fair to say, because I was a big fan of this deck last week. I thought it was a very clever bring, and I'd be curious to know why it isn't working out as well as I might have expected it to.
Yeah, I'm curious as well because I feel the lists this week have even become more refined compared to last week. Now with the Glaive-bound Adept package, some people running 1-drops. It could be that Shaxi's list is been underperforming because that one is a
That's
bit
fair.
different from the Demon Hunters that we're seeing. But what I do know now is to never agree with Raven, as I learned on Hot Takes, because it was Yumi and Raven that were touting this deck as the bring for this week, and guess what? It has not been performing in APAC at least.
Yeah, I know. If we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it in listening to anything Raven says.
Well, the opener for TIZS has been pretty good though. Spirit Jailer into Cycle, and he's already sitting on both Marrow Slicer and the follow-up of Soul Shard, and Glaive-bound Adept, very powerful in terms of a curve, whereas Surrender has hit the ramp though, and with that Kael'thas draw, could be pop, he just gets a GA soon.
And while TIZS made that turn look very easy and simple with the obvious play of the Marrow Slicer there, I was again wondering there if it should have been a Blade Dance, because if Surrender has the Guardian Animals, you don't want a Blade Dance there. That I can definitely agree on, because he's going to draw the cards from the deck, refill his hand, and it doesn't matter, really, that you're denying him the card draw. But if he doesn't have any extra card draw, we have seen, with, I think, surprising consistency in Grandmasters, the power of killing off a Twilight Runner when you have the chance to deny any card draw.
It's a fair point you bring up, but I feel that because he has Twin Slices and that Marrow Slice and also the Soul Shard Lapidary, that's argument for just holding on to Blade Dance as a huge bomb of a board clear.
Fair.
This is the rare type of hand that Blade Dance can get in the range of dealing minions that are buffed by Survival of the Fittest. It just gets scary if there's more than 3 on board at once.
I immediately stand corrected. As soon as I actually start to count up the amount of damage that he has available, I would say to Surrender, draw a million cards, see what I care, because he has got so much damage. And yeah, like you said, being able to burst through the taunts in one massive swing is probably more important. So upon reflection, I like it. I think it's a nice example of sweeping the minions away and attacking to face with the weapons.
Ooh. So obviously the skull can be outcasted, but I'm still looking at, you know, being able to push as much damage
Same.
this turn as possible. We could have seen a Blade Dance play with the Mana Feeder, just Hero Power, Mana Feeder, and Blade Dance.
That's true.
This play allows TIZS to, of course, Soul Shear, the one that gets death rattled out by the Teacher's Cut. And given that TIZS has meat and damage for the next 2 turns at minimum, I don't think he was prioritizing card draw.
Interesting cards found one after the other here for Surrender, because it does appear at first glance like it should probably be a Kael'thas turn. It's just how you go about it, the question is.
Well, something like this. I have to imagine Rising Winds looks slow for card draw when he already has Overflow in hand. But the bites are also quite slow. It's just that the bites for armor are nothing to scoff at. That's just healing that he might need in the near future.
Yeah. I mean, every point of healing is very, very important. The bite is definitely where I'm looking at most heavily.
Waits for no one.
Just a nice interaction that the Nature Studies discount occurs after the Kael'thas sets everything to 1.
Yep, 10 out of 10 ordering there from Surrender. Ooh, it's time to go. He has got to go quick. Wow.
Does he get both of...
What?
Wait, what happened?
I don't know.
Did he manage both of the survivals to come down that turn? Because that was obviously what he was hoping for. He doesn't look very stressed, so I think it happened. Oh! It was the GA.
I mean, he missed the hero power, but you're pretty happy with that, right?
Uh-huh.
That seems insane.
It absolutely is, especially after seeing the Marrow Slice get used and the Blade Dance. this is just an iron wall for TIZS to break through.
Yeah, there wasn't any mana to use Bite instead of Bog Beam at the end. No. Yeah, no matter how you slice it. I think
With
just missing
that,
the hero power.
Yeah, with the amount of time Surrender had remaining on the rope, to have the reaction to just play anything cheap and get down the GA was completely understandable.
And then, Gia, with TIZS going for Skull there, even though Surrender is at 9 mana, so you may be reasonably assuming that he can't go Survival of the Fittest, even with the Kale... Oh no, wait, he can't because he's overloaded. Doesn't matter though, TIZS just sends it down anyway.
Oh my gosh. Well, Surrender wasn't lethal on board with the 25 damage, but Bite Hero Power, that was... or even just Bite and then Hero Power for the next turn, because then TIZS would have to find a way to clear the board the next turn, and if he did that, he wouldn't have the mana to heal. I understand the concede, but everything just seemed to happen in the blink of an eye.
Right,
match.
it was just such a weird switch to the game. Like, I thought TIZS was in such a good spot. You go for the clear on the board on the previous turn with the Blade Dance, and then you go face every turn, but it was just one huge pop-off with Kael'thas that was clearly way too much. A weird instance. Definitely of how Demon Hunter functions, and I think just again an example of the relative weakness of the deck, and also the misnomer. You know, we call it Control Demon Hunter, or we did at first. It doesn't have that many ways to clear the board. You know, dealing with these big minions is very, very difficult for the deck to do unless you have exactly that Blade Dance, which is why we're seeing players tech in. You know, the silence in there as well in order to be able to get through the taunts. No one is truly decided on a list, I think, yet. But even with a powerful hand like that from TIZS, it still wasn't able to get over the finish line.
And we are possibly well on our way to see Surrender take his second 3-0 sweep with Druid for the weekend, but TIZS, of course, has the Mage as his last remaining bastion of hope. And this is a matchup where I tend to believe Mage's first game plan against Druid is aggressive. You want to curve out, getting down early Shinvala or Jandis can really help.
Right.
But if the Druid is able to ramp really quickly, switch gears and start looking for freezes and ways to scam instead.
Yeah, I mean, Surrender has the facial expression there upon drawing this much ramp that, like, when you're in school and the teacher said, right, get into pairs for this next project, he had the same expression that you and your best friend give each other there, of like, all right, it's time. Him and Ramp name a more iconic duo with this Druid, because this is the dream. Absolutely disgusting.
I recall a specific game from last season where we called this the dream hand as well, but just none of the payoff cards came off the top here. I have to say it is very unlikely in this version of Druid now, where just beasts are fine to draw, especially if it's Twilight Runner, because they can keep your card draw going. But there's a chance that the ramp doesn't lead anywhere. A very slim chance, which has now been dashed. The follow-up's there.
Yeah, I mean, all the follow-up you could possibly want at this point. Overgrowth will get him to 7, obviously, which means Ysera isn't available for a couple of extra turns. But even the fact that this minion is in play alone is low-key fantastic for Surrender. He can go Overgrowth, Twilight Runner, Broom, guarantee the card draw, bait Ysera the turn after. What more could you ask for?
Not very much. The only question I had was, do you ever play the Twilight Runner this turn? Just to give yourself the best chance of getting a value trade with it. Probably a moot point, because whether it's played this turn or next, it's vulnerable to Firebrand, which is of course the biggest punish. So Surrender is just taking the guaranteed line of getting Ysera down as soon as possible.
And TIZS on the other side is having to content himself with, what, 1 card mana Cyclones? Yuck.
That's not a Cyclone. That's like a little breeze of air.
Mana Gust.
Well, the Twilight Runner can come down now. It's a question of whether Surrender actually wants to Broom it to maybe guarantee himself the card draw, because, again, Firebrand is a threat, Devolving Missiles is a threat.
Sure.
Against Mage in particular, I feel that you're not overly reliant on having the rush from the Broomstick to come back on board.
Yeah, I mean,
It's against very board states where they both freeze and play giants, and in that case, you might not even have the board space to play Broom and Rush.
I think this is just good, straight up. Like, there is obviously the potential for needing to hold on to a broomstick, but Surrender, I think, correctly identifying, even if there isn't a Devolving Missiles being run core in the deck, it's still worth just getting it down, getting the card draw, nothing can go wrong, and he's going to be so far ahead on board anyway that you just don't really need the broom.
I can see that, but what surprises me is the use of Innervate just to get the hero power out. And so that means Innervate Ysera is not available next turn?
Yeah, it's obviously trying to protect the runner, or at the very least make it so just Jandis can't be played, just Raz can't be played, because specifically on 5 mana, that is the most like set in stone 1-card turn that you're going to be seeing from Tempo Mage.
It's fair, but at the same time, you're hoping that the mage doesn't have a way to remove a 5/3 from hand, which I feel is very optimistic. And the direct result is Surrender's play this turn.
Yeah, I mean, my point wasn't so much that he won't be able to remove the Twilight Runner, it's that if he wants to remove it, he can't play the expected on-play 5-drop
Okay.
of
That's very
Jandis
fair.
or Raz, which obviously didn't actually come into effect there, but I think from Surrender, on average, it's a good disruption turn that he went for there.
And I'm just very unused to seeing Druid play disruption turns. A lot of the time, they're
Right.
the ones that have very specific mana points where the opponent wants to disrupt that. But I suppose if it ends up with Surrender still ahead on board and just going for Twilight Runner again, it's not all that bad that the Ysera comes down a turn later. Anyway, this is looking much more like a proper Cyclone for TIZS.
Yeah, I do like this play from TIZS. I was wondering if he should go for Frost Nova there, even if it results in directly less spells immediately, because we've consistently seen with Mage against Druid, especially in these games where things aren't going to plan, that Frost Nova is really your only win condition a lot of the time in order to freeze the board and cheese your opponent's health total.
Freeze and Cheese. That's the more iconic duo than Surrender and Ramp. Okay, that's a piece of freezing, and the
That's
Vaporize can also be set up. However, this looks as good a time as any to go for the conj. These results are awful, though.
Yep, very, very lackluster results on the 8 drops. But again, it's Twin Spell. He can go again next turn, assuming there's no immediate strong removal from TIZS on the backswing.
And the Guardian Animals from Surrender will pick up a Thresher and Teacher's Pet because one each are in hand and both runners were played. So he can make use of the Thresher, but it's still not a complete board clear. Oh wait, the other minion rushing. It does look like it can be a full board clear on the 8 drops, which is the reason that Surrender would want to clear the board at all, is to deny conjure.
I mean, it seems worth it, right?
Yeah.
Nicely done. Hope to draw some cheap spells so that you can pop off with Kael'thas, drawing, survival of the fittest, all that usual nonsense, which makes it nigh on impossible for Mage to really have any avenue to come back.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
That's why we see TIZS trying to get this Solarian on board so that it can die as soon as possible and shuffle the Prime in to give himself a different win condition.
Bloated Python as well. Pretty nice option. Just again, sticky. Something to stick survival of the fittest on the next turn, if nothing else.
It's just a question of whether he wanted one thief down that turn. Ping didn't accomplish very much. Well, I say that at first, but the ping could have potentially helped set up for Flame Strike. The Spellbender defends against Iron Bark specifically, and maybe Bog Beam. I don't know, I feel like this is one of the least impactful secrets TIZS could have played.
Okay, playing around
Just testing
Counterspell.
for counters, of course, with the Innervate. Sees it's not there, and now thinking about more Ice Barrier, and either of those, I think, you still go face.
If a freeze comes down, yeah, it's just so unlikely for anything really to go wrong, no matter what you do. And you do want to like test going face with the Python first, I think, as well.
I think Surrender doesn't want to give TIZS the prime top deck possibility.
That's true. Yeah, that's a real concern.
The reason for trading the prime is what you said about freeze, but it would have to be freeze plus a bunch of spells that justify the spell damage being scary.
Right.
And I think the odds of that happening is probably less than immediately top decking the prime.
Wow. Okay. Some things are happening. Potion being generated can get you another apprentice, which can get you played again, and then you can play another potion. Like, this is starting to become insane, depending on what other spells he can generate. But Coilfang Warlord on the other side is a huge minion for Surrender to get.
Is it? I mean, it's all the same if there's freeze, right?
I guess so. I guess so.
And it's not there. That's why he went fishing with the Wand Thief.
Basically, nothing is being killed.
Yeah, he just is fishing for the Rays of Frost. Still not there. One more AI can get played. But if he's playing AI, then he's not playing the potions. But if he doesn't find freeze, he's dead. So it does have to be, from what I can see.
He's got to be thinking, what combination of taunts can I get that keep me alive?
I think it's better odds to go AI into Magic Trick, into freeze, but it's there. A lot of stuff happened there, but not the things that TIZS needed.
Yeah, I think there were very arguably some minor optimizations that could be done as well with playing the Wand Thief first of all in order to clear more room from the hand, because you could possibly get a 1-mana card. But even then, that is questionable in its own right. But the upshot of it all is that Surrender, for the second time already this weekend, just gets the easiest peasiest 3-0 sweep with his Druid once again. It's a solemn reminder, Gia, of I think just how powerful the deck can be, even when Kael'thas saw the nerf just this last week.
Yeah, it could be a case of people did not have very much time to test at all, and they just immediately saw the nerf and said, Kael'thas is dead, I can't play Druid. That's a fair line of thinking when you only have, 3 days between the end of the last week of and when you need to submit for the next week. It could be that people just overlook the deck. Surrender still believed in Druid, and particularly the Kael'thas version. Tyler still believed in Druid, cut Kael'thas, but still ended up with a pretty good top 4 showing. I think we're due to see a Druid resurgence in next week a Specialist. It could be anything then.
Yeah, I mean, next week you never know at all. But I agree, once we hit the round robin phase of weeks 4 through 7, that is where I think you're right. Druid is going to be a real contender for a top deck. But one other thing I want to talk about is just how much of a god Surrender is. Yet another week in the top 4, this time getting all the way through to the finals, taking on the newcomer after last week he lost to Bank Yugi in the semifinals. It's going to be an incredible final between Tom60229 and Surrender, two of the absolute best performing players, both in terms of their tournament results, their play, their creativeness, their adaptability. Any metric you want to throw onto the board, they are the absolute best of the best. And while we do have to give our commiserations to TIZS, I think he can hold his head high after a very well-played week in just his second week of play in Grandmasters.
Yeah, I would have to agree. TIZS, we didn't get to see him shine very much in that last series because it was quite a stomp, but I would definitely recommend people checking out TIZS's games from yesterday because he really gets to show his level of talent, and it's just not something that we get to see that often because he is a newcomer, somebody who just broke out in a recent Masters. Wouldn't be surprised to see him perform well next week and be a contender for Division A as we head into round robin.
It'd be great stuff. Love to see more representation from the newcomers and from Chinese Taipei, one of the less well-performing regions last season, but definitely one of the stronger regions overall, in my opinion. And Tom60229 is going to be doing a great job representing them in the finals. So while we give Surrender a bit of a break, get ready for the finals, get a cup of tea, sort out his band strategy, whatever he needs to do to set up for this absolute barn burner of a final up against Tom, we're going to go to a break. And when we come back, the last match of the day for APAC will be ready. Tom versus Surrender after this.